Welcome back. Today we're diving straight into something pretty intense, those violent border clashes between Pakistan and Afghanistan back in October 2025.
Yeah, really dramatic escalation.
It wasn't just minor skirmishing, was it? We saw reports Pakistani airstrikes hitting locations quite deep inside Afghanistan, places like Khost, Jalalabad.
And Paktika,
Yeah.
tragically, the speed of it all, the scale, it felt like more than just border control.
Exactly. It seemed highly political. And that's really what we want to unpack today, right? This isn't just about a border dispute.
Not at all. It's like a window, really, into Pakistan's whole security thinking, especially regarding Afghanistan. Our goal here is to sort of give you a shortcut into understanding this complex, sometimes really contradictory strategy Islamabad employs there.
A strategy driven by this idea of strategic depth.
Precisely. The pursuit of strategic depth. And the thing is, this whole dynamic, it's fundamentally tangled up with Pakistan's long rivalry with India. You can't separate them?
And the timing of those October strikes seems to underline that point perfectly. The sources we looked at really highlight this.
They do. The bombardment, which targeted the TTP, the Pakistani Taliban,
Yeah.
it happened exactly when the Afghan foreign minister, Amir Khan Muttaqi, was in New Delhi.
Yeah, finishing up a major visit where diplomatic ties between Afghanistan and India were actually upgraded.
You couldn't make it up. As Ishaq Atmar, an analyst specializing in Afghanistan, put it, the timing of those strikes during Muttaqi's visit, it could not be a coincidence.
A calculated signal, then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pakistan sending a message, loud and clear, to India, to the Taliban government in Kabul, and really to everyone watching that diplomatic upgrade. The message being, we are the key players influencing stability or instability in this region.
Okay, so let's get into that core concept you mentioned, strategic depth.
Right.
We hear this phrase all the time when discussing Pakistan. What does it actually mean for their military and intelligence thinking?
Well, at its heart, strategic depth comes from this deep-seated fear Pakistan has had since, the 1970s at least. A fear of encirclement.
Encirclement by India, presumably.
Primarily, yes. The thinking goes something like this. If a major war breaks out with India on the eastern border, Pakistan absolutely needs Afghanistan on its western border to be, well, if not an outright ally, then at least neutral or friendly.
So a secure rear guard.
Exactly. A politically reliable regime in Kabul that wouldn't allow India to use Afghan territory against Pakistan. Maybe even act as a potential sanctuary for Pakistani forces if things went badly. The goal is always to promote an Afghan government structure that maximizes Pakistani influence and, crucially, ensures hostility towards India.
So Afghanistan is viewed less as a sovereign neighbor and more as strategic territory, essential real estate in their defense calculus against India.
That's a fair way to put it. It feeds into this long-standing suspicion, this narrative within Pakistan's security establishment, that India is constantly working with Kabul to destabilize Pakistan.
How? What are they worried India might do from Afghanistan?
They believe India uses Afghan soil as a kind of springboard, particularly stoking unrest among Pakistan's own Baloch and Pashtun populations near the border. Now, many analysts argue Pakistan vastly exaggerates India's actual capability or even intent to do this via RNAW, India's external intelligence agency.
But the perception is powerful. I remember reading how blunt former military ruler Pervez Musharraf was about this.
Oh, incredibly candid. Musharraf actually admitted quite openly that Pakistan supported militant proxies, his justification, that the previous Afghan leader, Hamid Karzai, had helped India stab Pakistan in the back.
Wow. That's quite the admission.
It really lays bare the mindset, doesn't it? Supporting these groups isn't seen internally as aggression necessarily, but as the defensive necessity against what they perceive as this Indo-Afghan collusion.
Okay, so if Musharraf admitted the thinking, the Afghan Taliban themselves are the sort of prime example of this proxy strategy in action. How important was Pakistan's support for them, especially after 2001?
Absolutely critical. You could argue the Taliban's survival, let alone their resurgence after being ousted in 2001, would have been, well, almost impossible without Pakistani sanctuary and substantial support.
And this wasn't just turning a blind eye, right?
Oh no, this was active, comprehensive support. We're talking funding, training, logistics, even military advisors. Much of it channeled through the ISI, Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence Agency. They effectively gave the Taliban leadership a safe haven to regroup, rebuild, and plan their insurgency.
But that's a huge gamble, isn't it? You spend decades cultivating this asset for strategic depth, and now, Well, now that relationship is causing Pakistan massive security headaches itself. The sources called it replete with tension.
It is, absolutely.
Mhm.
And this is key. Pakistan supported the Taliban, but it never fully controlled them. The Taliban have always had their own agenda, their own sense of autonomy.
Can you give some examples of that friction? Where did they push back against Pakistan?
Sure. A big one was back in 2010. The Taliban deliberately moved their main diplomatic office, their political representation, to Doha, Qatar. Why? Largely to develop international contacts free from Pakistani interference, free from ISI meddling.
Interesting. So seeking independence even then.
Exactly. And perhaps the most persistent, the most symbolic point of friction, the Durand Line, the border. Pakistan desperately wants Kabul to formally recognize it.
And the Taliban refuses.
Consistently. They've
Oh.
repeatedly rebuffed Pakistani requests
Why is that border, the Durand Line, such a sticking point?
because it cuts right through the Pashtun heartland. It was imposed by the British back in the colonial era, dividing Pashtun tribes between Afghanistan and what is now Pakistan.
Ah, so for the Taliban, which is predominantly Pashtun.
Right. Recognizing that line would be seen as legitimizing a colonial division of their people. It's a deeply nationalist issue for them. So refusing to recognize it is a powerful assertion of sovereignty, and it directly contradicts Islamabad's goal of cementing that border for its own strategic reasons.
And this tension, this lack of full control, has now sort of exploded with the TTP issue, hasn't it? The Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, the group targeted in those October airstrikes.
That's the crux of the current crisis. The TTP is focused on attacking the Pakistani state, but they share ideology, history, and often personnel with the Afghan Taliban. Pakistan is furious, accusing the Afghan government, their former protégés, of sheltering TTP fighters, allowing them safe havens to launch attacks back into Pakistan.
And the Afghan Taliban's response.
They deny it. Flat out deny sheltering the TTP. In fact, they've turned the tables, accusing Pakistan of sheltering fighters from ISKP, the Islamic State affiliate which attacks the Taliban. It shows how strategic depth can easily become, well, strategic blowback. The asset has become a liability.
So while Pakistan is entangled with proxies and these hard power tactics, its main rival, India, seems to be playing a very different game in Afghanistan.
Sharply different tools, yes. India's approach is often characterized as relying heavily on soft power.
What are India's main objectives there?
Primarily promoting a stable, hopefully democratic order in Afghanistan, countering militancy through development and diplomacy, and basically building long-term influence and goodwill. New Delhi is very unlikely to deploy military force there.
And they've backed this up with significant investment.
Huge investment. India committed over $3 billion in economic assistance since 2001. This isn't just aid packets, it's major infrastructure, things people see every day.
Like what?
Landmark projects. The Salma Dam, now called the Afghan-India Friendship Dam, is a big one. They funded the construction of Afghanistan's new parliament building in Kabul. Beyond the big projects, there's extensive training for Afghan civil servants, thousands of educational scholarships for Afghan students to study in India.
And this presumably translates into positive public opinion.
Massively. There was a survey back in 2016, I think, that found nearly 62% of Afghans viewed India favorably. Compare that to Pakistan, just 3.7%. That goodwill is a strategic asset for India.
So India builds goodwill, Pakistan cultivates proxies, but India still faces threats in Afghanistan from groups linked to Pakistan, right? The sources mentioned anti-India terrorist groups operating there.
Absolutely. That's a grave concern for New Delhi. Groups that bear what analysts call a clear Pakistani signature.
Which ones are most prominent?
Two stand out. First, Jaish-e-Mohammed, or JEM, associated with Masood Azhar, the cleric released after that Indian Airlines hijacking in 1999. JEM was implicated in major attacks, like the 2001 attack on India's parliament.
And the other?
Lashkar-e-Taiba, Leti. This group is often described as perhaps the most loyal, cohesive, and frankly lethal proxy of the Pakistani military establishment. They were behind the horrific 2008 Mumbai attacks.
And Leti isn't just focused on India itself, they operate in Afghanistan.
Correct. They've carried out multiple attacks targeting Indian interests inside Afghanistan, the embassy, consulates, aid workers, construction projects, anything linked to India's presence.
Is their presence there acknowledged?
Well, here's the strategic calculation. Leti almost never claims responsibility for attacks inside Afghanistan. This is seen as a deliberate tactic. Why? To avoid putting direct international pressure on Islamabad, their state sponsor. It helps maintain plausible deniability, masking that proxy link.
Okay, so if we pull all these threads together, The strategic depth doctrine, the proxy relationships, India's soft power, the anti-India groups, and connect it back to those October 2025 clashes. The geopolitical signaling becomes really hard to miss.
It really does. As we touched on earlier, analysts like Ishak Atmar saw the timing airstrikes during Mutaki's India visit as unmistakable. Pakistan signaling its intense displeasure at India, upgrading ties with the Taliban government. A government Pakistan likely still views as fundamentally dependent on, or at least answerable to, Islamabad.
And the official rhetoric from Pakistan after the strikes was pretty sharp too, wasn't it?
Extremely sharp. Very unified message from the top. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, the Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir, they both condemned what they termed provocations from Afghan soil.
Munir's language seemed particularly strong.
It was. He warned Pakistan would respond decisively, beyond proportions, to even a minor provocation.
Right.
And he directly invoked the nuclear dimension, saying there's no space for war in a nuclearized environment.
But then immediately followed that with a threat towards India.
Right. Claiming Pakistan's arsenal could shatter the misconceived immunity of India's geographic war space. It's that constant linkage back to the primary adversary, India, even when the immediate crisis is with Afghanistan. Pakistan also explicitly blamed Indian proxies in Afghanistan for terror attacks inside Pakistan.
And the immediate fallout wasn't just rhetorical, was it? Pakistan took concrete economic action.
Yes, using trade as leverage, as a weapon almost. They sealed the main border crossings, Torkham and Chaman. But crucially, they also specifically shut down the Atari Wagah land route for Afghan-India transit trade.
What's the impact of that?
It effectively halts all overland trade between Afghanistan and India. This is devastating for Afghan exporters, particularly for things like fresh fruit and dry fruits, a vital part of their economy, which relies heavily on the Indian market via that route. It hits the Afghan economy directly.
And amidst all this high-stakes geopolitics and economic pressure, there was a very real human cost.
Tragically, yes.
Okay.
While diplomats from Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China called for calm and de-escalation, the airstrikes had immediate fatal consequences. The reported death of 3 local Afghan cricketers in Paktika province during one of the strikes really brought the human cost home.
And that had repercussions.
It did. The Afghanistan Cricket Board immediately withdrew their team from an upcoming Tri-Nation series that involved Pakistan, a symbolic but powerful gesture of national mourning and protest.
So, wrapping this all up, what's the main takeaway here? What does this escalation, this whole dynamic, tell us about the region moving forward?
I think the core conclusion, shared by most analysts looking at this, is that the fundamental driver remains the deep-seated rivalry between India and Pakistan. Afghanistan, unfortunately, remains the primary, well, the bound theater of competition for them.
Pakistan feels it has to maintain influence in Kabul.
Yes, its security calculus dictates that. And it will likely keep searching for ways, whether through proxies, economic pressure, or diplomatic maneuvering, to counter or undermine India's influence, particularly India's successful soft power approach.
So even if, hypothetically, some kind of comprehensive peace deal was reached within Afghanistan itself, that wouldn't necessarily fix the underlying problem.
Probably not the core India-Pakistan hostility, no. That conflict has roots much deeper than just who holds power in Kabul. It goes back to partition itself. An internal Afghan peace deal might, constrain some spoilers like the TTP, maybe stabilize things internally.
But it wouldn't fundamentally change the India-Pakistan dynamic.
Unlikely. That rivalry would just find other outlets, other ways to manifest. The competition would continue, perhaps in different forms.
Which leads us to a final, maybe quite sobering thought for you, the listener, about Afghanistan's future vulnerability. The sources suggest something quite counterintuitive, that instability, even chaos in Afghanistan, could actually benefit Pakistan strategically in this deadly triangle.
It's a grim possibility. If international support for Afghanistan, especially counterterrorism assistance, were to be withdrawn rapidly without a solid, inclusive peace agreement holding things together, well, the resulting chaos could create an environment highly favorable to Islamabad's strategic goals vis-à-vis India.
How so?
Because chaos provides cover. It weakens Kabul's ability to control its territory, making it easier for Pakistan to potentially intensify proxy activities against Indian interests using groups like Let-in-T or GEM, who could operate with greater impunity and deniability, potentially still relying on elements within Afghanistan for safe haven. The more unstable Afghanistan is, the argument goes, the more potent Pakistan's hard power proxy options become against its main rival, India.
A truly dangerous dynamic, the inherent instability amplified by the external rivalry.
Exactly. That's the terrifying reality of this deadly triangle.